The dusty Arizona wind whipped through Amelia Carson's hair as she stood at the altar of the small church in Oro Blanco, her wedding dress feeling heavier with each passing moment, wondering if the groom would even show up to claim his mail-order bride. But he did show up. Thomas Winters arrived 20 minutes late, smelling of whiskey and wearing a scowl that suggested he regretted sending away for a wife in the first place. The ceremony was brief, perfunctory, lacking any warmth or affection. The preacher's words about love and cherishing seemed to fall on deaf ears, as Thomas barely looked at Amelia during the entire exchange of vows. It was June of 1883, and Amelia had traveled all the way from Boston to this small Arizona mining town, hoping for a fresh start after her father's death had left her with nothing but debts and the clothing on her back. The advertisement had seemed promising, a widower seeking a wife to help run his ranch and care for his home. She had imagined kindness, perhaps not love immediately, but at least respect and partnership. The reality was far different. Thomas's ranch house was run down, the paint peeling from the wooden boards, the fence posts tilting at odd angles. Inside was worse. Dishes piled in the sink, dust coating every surface, and a smell of neglect that made Amelia's stomach turn. Thomas showed her to a small bedroom and told her curtly that she could sleep there, that he expected meals on time, and that she should stay out of his way otherwise. The first week passed in a blur of endless work. Amelia scrubbed and cleaned, cooked and mended, trying her best to make the house livable. Thomas barely spoke to her except to criticize. The biscuits were too hard. The stew was too salty. She had hung the washing wrong. Nothing she did seemed to please him, and with each criticism, Amelia felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller and more invisible. By the second week, she understood the real reason Thomas had sent for a bride. He wanted a servant, someone to cook and clean without pay, someone he could control. The ranch was failing, the cattle thin and sparse. Thomas spent most of his time in town, gambling away what little money they had, leaving Amelia alone to manage everything. She tried to tend the animals, but she had no experience with ranching. The chickens scattered when she approached, the cow kicked over the milk pail more often than not, and the vegetable garden was so overgrown with weeds that she could barely find the actual plants. Each failure made her feel more worthless, more like the burden Thomas constantly told her she was. "Another wasted mouth to feed," he would mutter when he came home to find her struggling with some task. Should have known better than to think a city girl could be useful. Amelia would lie awake at night in her small room, tears sliding down her cheeks, wondering how her life had come to this. She had no money to leave, no family to return to, and no friends in this strange desert town. She was trapped, and the weight of that realization pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. One particularly hot afternoon in late June, Amelia was attempting to fix a broken section of the chicken coop when the whole structure collapsed around her. She sat in the dust and splintered wood, chickens squawking and fleeing in all directions, and felt something inside her break as well. She put her head in her hands and wept, great sobbing gasps that shook her whole body. That was when she heard the horse approaching. Amelia looked up, wiping hastily at her tears, to see a man on a beautiful Palomino horse riding up the path to the house. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn blue shirt. Even from a distance, she could see the concern on his face as he took in the scene before him. "Madam, are you hurt?" he called out, dismounting smoothly and approaching with long strides. Amelia scrambled to her feet, brushing dust and wood chips from her dress, acutely aware of how she must look with her tear-stained face and disheveled appearance. "I am fine, thank you," just a small accident." The man looked at the destroyed chicken coop, then back at her, and his expression was kind, not judgmental. "That looks like more than a small accident. I am James Yeager. My ranch borders yours to the south. I was riding by and thought I would introduce myself to the new Mrs. Winters." "Amelia," she said softly, not feeling much like a Mrs. Anything. "Amelia Carson. I mean Winters." James tilted his head slightly, studying her with eyes that were a striking shade of green. "Well, Mrs. Winters, how about I help you round up these chickens and see about rebuilding this coop? Cannot be easy managing this place." "Oh, I could not ask you to do that," Amelia protested, even as her heart leaped at the offer of help. "You must have your own work to attend to." "Nothing that cannot wait an hour or two," James said easily. "Besides, it would not sit right with me to leave a neighbor in need." There was something in his voice, a genuine warmth that Amelia had not heard from anyone in weeks. Before she could protest further, James had already removed his hat and started gathering up the scattered chickens with a practiced ease that made her attempts look even more pathetic by comparison. Amelia watched him for a moment, then joined in, following his instructions. He showed her how to approach the birds calmly, how to herd them gently rather than chase them. Within 20 minutes, all the chickens were safely contained in a makeshift pen James had constructed from some intact pieces of the coop. "There now," he said, wiping his hands on his trousers. "That will hold them for tonight. Tomorrow I can bring over some proper lumber and we can build something more permanent if you would like." "I could not possibly impose," Amelia said, though the thought of trying to rebuild the coop alone made her want to cry again. "You have already done so much." James looked at her for a long moment, and Amelia had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her polite facade to the desperation and loneliness underneath. "It is no imposition. Neighbors help neighbors out here. That is how we all survive." He settled his hat back on his head and moved toward his horse, then paused and turned back. "Mrs. Winters, if you do not mind me saying so, you look like you could use a friend. If you ever need anything at all, my ranch is just over that ridge to the south. Do not hesitate to come find me." Amelia felt fresh tears prick her eyes at his kindness, so unexpected and undeserved. "Thank you, Mr. Yeager. That is very kind of you, James," he corrected with a small smile. "And it is just common decency, nothing more, but it felt like more to Amelia. It felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman." After James rode away, Amelia finished her chores with slightly less heaviness in her heart. For the first time since arriving in Oro Blanco, someone had been kind to her without wanting anything in return. Someone had seen her struggling and offered help without making her feel small or stupid. When Thomas returned that evening, already half drunk, he barely noticed the makeshift chicken pen or asked about her day. Amelia served him dinner in silence, enduring his complaints about the temperature of the food, and retreated to her room as soon as she could. That night, she thought about James Yeager's green eyes and gentle voice, and for the first time in weeks, she fell asleep without crying. True to his word, James returned the next afternoon with lumber and tools. Amelia heard the wagon approaching and went out to meet him, her heart doing an odd little skip in her chest that she told herself was just gratitude. "Afternoon, Mrs. Winters," James called out cheerfully. "I thought we could get that chicken coop sorted out before the heat of the day sets in." "Please, call me Amelia," she said, surprising herself with the boldness. "And I really must insist on paying you for the lumber." James shook his head as he began unloading boards from his wagon. "Consider it a welcome gift to the neighborhood. Besides, I had this wood left over from a project. It was just sitting unused in my barn." Amelia doubted that was entirely true, but she did not argue. Instead, she asked, What can I do to help?" Over the next 2 hours, James taught her how to build a proper chicken coop. He explained everything as he worked, showing her how to measure and cut the boards, how to hammer nails straight, how to construct something sturdy that would last. Unlike Thomas, who only criticized her mistakes, James was patient when she made errors, simply showing her the correct way without making her feel foolish. "You are a quick learner," he said as they stepped back to admire the finished coop. "That is a valuable trait out here." Amelia felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "I am trying. Everything is so different from Boston. Sometimes I feel like I will never figure it out." James leaned against the fence, his expression thoughtful. "How long have you been here?" "Nearly 3 weeks," Amelia said, then added before she could stop herself, "It feels like much longer." There was a wealth of meaning in those words, and James seemed to understand. His jaw tightened slightly, and he looked toward the house. "Thomas treating you all right?" Amelia felt a stab of panic. She could not criticize her husband to a stranger, even one as kind as James. "He is my husband. I am doing my best to be a good wife." "That was not what I asked," James said gently. Amelia looked down at her hands, rough and reddened from all the unfamiliar work. "It is an adjustment for both of us. I am sure it will get easier with time." James was quiet for a moment, then said, "My place is just over that ridge, like I said yesterday. If you ever need anything, day or night, you come find me. Do you understand?" Amelia met his eyes and saw genuine concern there, and something else she could not quite name. "I understand. Thank you, James." He tipped his hat to her and climbed back onto his wagon. As he drove away, Amelia felt that strange tightness in her chest again, the one that came from being shown unexpected kindness. Over the next few weeks, James found reasons to stop by fairly regularly. He brought over a cow that was a better milk producer and showed Amelia the proper technique for milking. He helped her repair the sagging porch steps. He taught her which plants in the garden were vegetables and which were weeds. Each visit was brief and proper, always with some practical purpose, but Amelia found herself looking forward to them with an intensity that made her feel guilty. She was a married woman, after all, even if it was a marriage in name only. Thomas still barely spoke to her except to complain, still spent most of his time in town drinking and gambling. He had not touched her beyond a rough grip on her arm when she had accidentally let his dinner get cold one evening. They lived like strangers sharing a house, and Amelia felt the loneliness like a physical ache in her bones. But when James visited, that loneliness receded. They would talk as they worked, and Amelia learned about his life. He was 26 years old, had come to Arizona 5 years ago from Texas, and had built his ranch up from nothing through hard work and determination. He had never married, though he spoke wistfully sometimes of wanting a family someday. "It gets lonely," he admitted one afternoon as they worked together to mend a section of fence. "A ranch is a lot of work for one person, but more than that, I miss having someone to share things with, someone to talk to at the end of a long day." Amelia understood that feeling all too well. "I know what you mean. Loneliness is harder to bear when you are surrounded by people than when you are actually alone." James looked at her sharply, and she realized she had revealed too much. She quickly changed the subject, asking him about his cattle, and he let her, but she could feel his concern like a warm blanket wrapped around her shoulders. It was mid-August when things came to a head. Thomas came home one evening drunker than usual and in a foul mood. He had lost heavily at cards and was looking for someone to blame. When he found Amelia in the kitchen preparing dinner, he started in on her immediately. "Useless woman," he slurred, knocking a pot off the stove. "Cannot even keep a simple house running. Should have left you in Boston where you belong. Amelia bent to retrieve the pot, her hands shaking. "I am sorry, Thomas. Let me get you some coffee." "Do not want coffee," he snapped. "Want my money back that I wasted on bringing you here. Biggest mistake I ever made." Each word was like a knife cutting into Amelia's already battered self-worth. She had tried so hard, worked from dawn until long after dark, and it was never enough. She would never be enough. "I am sorry," she whispered again, because she did not know what else to say. Thomas lurched toward her, his face twisted with anger, and Amelia felt a spike of real fear. But before he could reach her, there was a sharp knock at the door. "Thomas Winters, you in there?" James's voice called from outside. Thomas stopped, confusion crossing his face. "What the hell does Yeager want?" Amelia quickly moved to open the door, relief flooding through her. James stood on the porch, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes swept over Amelia in a quick assessment that missed nothing. "Evening, Thomas," James said evenly. "Sorry to bother you folks, but one of your steers broke through the fence and got mixed in with my herd. Wanted to let you know so you can come collect him tomorrow." It was a transparent excuse, and Amelia suspected there was no steer, but Thomas was too drunk to notice. He mumbled something and stumbled toward his bedroom, leaving Amelia and James standing in the doorway. "Are you all right?" James asked quietly, his eyes searching her face. Amelia nodded, not trusting her voice. She was not all right, had not been all right since she arrived in this place, but she could not say that. Could not admit how completely trapped and worthless she felt. James stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Amelia, this is not right. The way he treats you, it is not right." "He is my husband," Amelia said, the words automatic now. "I took vows." "Vows go both ways," James said, a hint of anger creeping into his voice. "He is supposed to cherish you, protect you, not tear you down every chance he gets." Amelia felt tears burning her eyes. "What am I supposed to do? I have nowhere to go, no money, no family. I am stuck here." "You are not stuck," James said fiercely. "You always have choices, Amelia. Always." Before she could respond, they heard Thomas stirring in the other room, and James quickly stepped back. "I will come by tomorrow to check on that fence," he said, loudly enough for Thomas to hear if he was listening. Then quieter, "Please be careful. And remember what I said about coming to find me if you need help." After he left, Amelia cleaned up the kitchen and went to her small room. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, James's words echoing in her mind. "You always have choices." But did she? Women did not just leave their husbands, no matter how unhappy they were. It was not done. She had made her bed, as her mother would have said, and now she had to lie in it. But lying in that bed felt like slowly suffocating, like disappearing one piece at a time until there was nothing left of the woman she used to be. The next morning, Thomas was gone before Amelia woke up, probably sleeping off his hangover somewhere in town. She went about her chores mechanically. The joy she had started to feel when James visited now dimmed by the reminder of her reality last night. James did come by to check the fence as promised, and Amelia could barely look at him, embarrassed by what he had witnessed. "Amelia," he said softly as they walked along the fence line, "you do not need to be ashamed. None of this is your fault." "I feel like such a failure," Amelia admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Every single thing I do is wrong. I cannot cook right or clean right or manage the ranch right. Maybe Thomas is correct. Maybe I am just useless." James stopped walking and turned to face her, his hands gently gripping her shoulders. "Now you listen to me, Amelia Carson. You are one of the strongest, most capable women I have ever met. In just 2 months, you have learned skills that take some people years to master. You keep this whole place running while Thomas drinks away what little money you have. You are not useless. You are not a failure. You are remarkable, and any man who cannot see that is a fool." Amelia looked up into his green eyes and saw such conviction there, such genuine belief in her, that something inside her chest cracked open. "You really think that?" "I know it," James said firmly. "And I wish you could see yourself the way I see you." They stood there for a long moment, close enough that Amelia could feel the warmth radiating from his body, see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. This was wrong. She was married. She should not be feeling this way about another man, should not be leaning closer to him like a flower toward the sun. But being near James made her feel alive in a way she had not felt in months, made her feel like maybe she was not completely worthless after all. James seemed to realize how close they were standing at the same moment. He stepped back quickly, clearing his throat. "I should go. But Amelia, please remember what I said. You have choices. You deserve to be happy." After he left, Amelia stood by the fence for a long time, her mind churning. She was developing feelings for James. That much was clear. But what could she possibly do about it? She was trapped in a loveless marriage to a man who despised her, with no way out and no future beyond endless drudgery and criticism. That evening, Thomas came home in another foul mood. He had lost more money, and this time he blamed Amelia for it, saying she was bad luck, that everything had gone wrong since she arrived. His words cut deep, finding all the places where she was already wounded and pressing harder. "I wish I had never sent for you," Thomas spat. "You are nothing but a burden, eating my food, using my resources, giving nothing back." Amelia felt something inside her shift at those words. A burden. That was what she had become, what she had always feared becoming. After her father died, she had been a burden on the neighbors who had taken her in temporarily. When she had answered Thomas's advertisement, she had hoped to finally be useful, to have purpose and value. Instead, she was more of a burden than ever. She lay in bed that night, Thomas's words echoing in her head. A burden. Useless. A mistake. Worthless. The words piled up like stones until she felt crushed beneath their weight. When dawn came, Amelia got up and went through the motions of her morning chores. She fed the chickens, milked the cow, started breakfast. But she felt hollow, scraped clean of everything except a deep, aching exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. She was standing at the stove, mechanically stirring a pot of oatmeal when she heard the horse approaching. Through the window, she saw James riding up, and her heart gave that now familiar skip. But she could not face him today, could not bear to see his kindness when she felt this raw and broken. But James had already dismounted and was heading toward the door. Amelia quickly wiped at her face, trying to compose herself, but when she opened the door to his knock, she knew immediately that he could see right through her attempt at normalcy. "What is wrong?" James asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "Nothing," Amelia said automatically. "Everything is fine." "Amelia," James said gently, "you do not have to pretend with me. What happened?" And somehow that gentle question, that genuine concern, broke through the dam Amelia had been holding in place. The tears started falling, and once they started, she could not stop them. Great wrenching sobs that shook her whole body, all the pain and loneliness and despair of the past months pouring out. James did not hesitate. He stepped inside and pulled her into his arms, holding her as she cried, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soothing words. "It is all right. Let it out. You are safe. I have got you." Amelia clung to him, her face pressed against his chest, and wept like she had not wept since her father died. She cried for the life she had lost, for the hopes she had brought to Arizona that had been crushed, for the woman she had been who was slowly disappearing under the weight of Thomas's constant criticism. She cried because she was so tired of being strong, so tired of pretending everything was fine when it was all falling apart. When the storm of tears finally subsided, Amelia became aware that she was still in James's arms, that her hands were clutching his shirt, that she could hear his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear. She should pull away, should put proper distance between them, but she could not make herself move. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I should not have fallen apart like that." "You have nothing to apologize for," James said, his voice rumbling in his chest. "Everyone has a breaking point, Amelia. You have been strong for so long." Amelia finally pulled back enough to look up at him, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. It was not just concern or kindness. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race and her skin flush. "Amelia," James said softly, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a lingering tear. "I need to tell you something, and I know the timing is terrible, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I care about you. More than I should, more than is proper, but I cannot help it. Watching you suffer like this, watching him tear you down day after day, it is killing me." Amelia's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. "James, I am married." "I know," he said. "Believe me, I know, and I have fought against these feelings every single day. But you deserve to know that someone sees you, really sees you, and thinks you are extraordinary. You are not a burden, Amelia. You are the answer to prayers I did not even know I was praying." Tears started falling again, but these were different. These came from a place of longing so deep it hurt. "I care about you too," Amelia whispered. "I have tried not to, but I cannot help it either. When you are here, I feel like I can breathe again, like I matter, like I am real." James's eyes darkened and he leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. "You do matter. You are so real and so strong and so beautiful." They stood there, balanced on the edge of something that could not be taken back, both knowing they should step away but unable to make themselves move. The air between them felt charged, heavy with everything they could not say, could not do. It was the sound of a horse in the distance that finally made them spring apart. James stepped back quickly, running a hand through his hair, his expression torn between longing and frustration. "I should go," he said roughly. "But Amelia, I meant what I said. You have choices. If you want to leave here, I will help you. I will buy you a ticket to anywhere you want to go, set you up somewhere you can start fresh. No strings attached, no expectations. I just want you to be happy and safe. And if I do not want to go anywhere?" Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If what I want is impossible," James looked at her with such intensity that she felt it like a physical touch. "Nothing is impossible, but you have to decide what you want, Amelia. I cannot make that choice for you." After he left, Amelia sank into a chair, her mind reeling. James had essentially offered her a way out, a chance at freedom. But could she really leave her marriage? And if she did, what would that mean for her reputation, her future? A divorced woman, or even just a woman who left her husband, would be scandalous, unmarriageable, potentially unemployable. But staying meant more of the same. More criticism, more loneliness, more feeling like a burden and a failure. It meant watching her spirit slowly crushed until there was nothing left of who she used to be. When Thomas came home that evening, Amelia studied him with new eyes. He was not a bad man, exactly, just a bitter, disappointed one who had hoped a wife would solve his problems and was angry that she had not. He did not love her, had never even tried to. She was just a tool to him, one that had turned out to be defective. Over the next week, Amelia turned the problem over and over in her mind. She prayed about it, though she was not sure God was listening to a woman contemplating leaving her husband. She weighed her options, trying to see a path forward that would not destroy her completely. James stayed away, and Amelia knew he was giving her space to think. But she missed him with an ache that was almost physical. She missed his smile, his patient explanations, the way he made her feel capable and valued. She missed feeling alive. It was a Sunday morning in late August when Thomas made the decision for her. He came back from town with news that he had sold the ranch to pay off his gambling debts. He was moving to California to try his luck in the gold fields, and he was going alone. "I will send for you once I get established," he said, though they both knew he was lying. "Until then, you can stay with the widow Henderson in town. She takes in boarders." Amelia stared at him, shock rendering her speechless. He was abandoning her just like that, leaving her with nothing and no one. "What am I supposed to do?" she finally managed to ask. Thomas shrugged. "Not my problem anymore. The new owner takes possession next week. You need to be out by then." And with that, he left, taking the horse and wagon and what little money was in the house. Amelia stood in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by the life she had tried so hard to build, and felt a strange sense of relief mixed with her fear. The decision had been made for her. Her marriage, such as it was over. Now she just had to figure out what came next. She was still standing there an hour later when she heard another horse approach. This time it was James, and the moment she saw him, all the emotions she had been holding back came flooding out. "He left," she said as soon as James was close enough to hear. "Thomas sold the ranch and left. He is going to California, and I am supposed to go stay with a widow in town." James's expression went through several emotions in quick succession: shock, anger, and then something that looked almost like hope. "When did this happen?" "This morning. He just told me and left." Amelia wrapped her arms around herself. "I do not even have enough money to stay with Mrs. Henderson for more than a week or two." James dismounted and came to stand in front of her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Then you do not go to Mrs. Henderson. You come stay at my place." "James, I cannot. The scandal would destroy both of us. I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Gonzalez, who lives in the small cottage on my property with her daughter. You can stay with them. Everything will be completely proper and above board." James squeezed her shoulders gently. "Please, Amelia, let me help you. You should not have to face this alone." Amelia looked up into his earnest face and felt something unlock in her chest. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much about what happens to me?" "Because you are the answer to my lonely prayers," James said simply. "All those nights I sat on my porch wishing for someone to share my life with, someone smart and strong and kind. I was wishing for you. I just did not know it yet." Amelia felt tears sting her eyes again, but this time they were not from sadness. "I do not deserve your kindness." "You deserve so much more than kindness," James said. "You deserve to be cherished and respected and loved. And if you will let me, I would like to spend the rest of my life showing you that." "James," Amelia whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "I know it is too soon," James said quickly. "I know you need time to heal and figure out who you are outside of this terrible situation. I am not asking for anything right now except the chance to be near you, to help you find your feet again. The rest, we can figure out as we go." Amelia thought about her options. She could go to town, stay with Mrs. Henderson until her money ran out, and then what? Try to find work as a seamstress or a laundress, scraping by in a town that would look at her with pity or contempt as the abandoned wife. Or she could accept James's help, stay on his ranch in the proper care of his housekeeper, and maybe, just maybe, start to build something new. "All right," she said finally. "I will come stay with Mrs. Gonzalez, but I want to work for my keep. I will not be a burden on you too." James smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "You could never be a burden, Amelia, but if it makes you feel better, I am sure we can find plenty for you to do." Mrs. Gonzalez has been after me to hire someone to help with the garden and the chickens." They spent the rest of the day packing up Amelia's few belongings and loading them into James's wagon. As they drove away from the ranch that had been her prison for the past months, Amelia looked back only once. Then she turned her face forward, toward whatever future awaited her. James's ranch was like stepping into a different world. Where Thomas's place had been run down and neglected, James's was well maintained and clearly cared for. The house was a sturdy two-story building with a wide porch. The barn was freshly painted, and everywhere she looked there were signs of hard work and pride of ownership. Mrs. Gonzalez came out to meet them, a round woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile. Her daughter, Rosa, was about 18, shy but friendly. They welcomed Amelia without any questions or judgment, showing her to the small cottage they shared and making up a bed for her in Rosa's room. "You stay as long as you need," Mrs. Gonzalez said in heavily accented English. "James, he is a good man. He would not bring you here if you were not in need." That first night, Amelia lay in the narrow bed and felt something she had not felt in months. Safe. The room was clean and simple, Rosa's quiet breathing from the other bed oddly comforting, and the knowledge that James was nearby like a warm blanket around her shoulders. She fell asleep and did not wake until morning light streamed through the window. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable routine. Amelia helped Mrs. Gonzalez with the household tasks, learning from the older woman's years of experience. She tended the vegetable garden, which was extensive and well-planned, and gathered eggs from the chickens who seemed much more cooperative than the ones at Thomas's ranch had been. She helped Rosa with the washing and mending, and in the evenings, she would sometimes sit on the porch and watch the sunset paint the Arizona sky in shades of orange and gold. James was respectful and proper, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But he found excuses to be around, helping with tasks that needed a man's strength, joining them for meals that Mrs. Gonzalez insisted he share with them. Amelia found herself watching for him, her heart lifting whenever she heard his voice or saw him riding in from checking the cattle. They would talk as they worked, conversations that ranged from the practical to the philosophical. James told her about his dreams for the ranch, his plans to expand the herd and maybe start breeding horses. Amelia shared stories about her childhood in Boston, the bookshop her father had owned, the life she had once imagined for herself. "You miss it?" James asked one afternoon as they worked together to reinforce a section of fence. "The city, I mean." Amelia considered the question. "I miss my father and I miss the person I was when he was alive. But the city itself? No, I do not think so. There is something about the openness here, the space to breathe and think. In Boston, I always felt like I was supposed to be someone I was not, supposed to want things I did not actually want." "What do you want?" James asked, his eyes on hers. Amelia felt her cheeks heat, but she met his gaze steadily. "I want to matter. I want to use my hands and my mind to build something real. I want to wake up in the morning excited about the day ahead instead of dreading it. I want to feel like I am enough just as I am." "You are enough," James said quietly. "More than enough." Those moments between them were like small gifts, precious and rare. A hand brush while reaching for the same tool. A shared smile over some small success. The way James looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, his expression so full of affection and longing that it made her heart ache. But Amelia held back from taking the final step, from admitting what she knew in her heart to be true. She was falling in love with James Yeager, had probably been falling in love with him since that first day when he helped her with the chickens. But she was still technically married to Thomas, even if he had abandoned her. She did not know what the law said about such situations, did not know if she could even get a divorce or how long it would take. It was Mrs. Gonzalez who finally addressed the elephant in the room. She cornered Amelia one morning while they were kneading bread dough, Rosa having gone to town for supplies. "That boy is in love with you," Mrs. Gonzalez said without preamble, "and unless I am very wrong, you love him too." Amelia felt her face flush. "It is complicated." "Love is always complicated," Mrs. Gonzalez said with a knowing smile, "but life is too short to let complications keep you from happiness. James, he is a good man. He will do right by you." "I am still married," Amelia said quietly. Mrs. Gonzalez made a dismissive sound. "That man, he left you with nothing. He broke his vows first. You owe him nothing." "But the law, society, what people will think, you worry too much about what other people think," Mrs. Gonzalez interrupted. "Other people, they are not the ones who have to live your life. You are. James is. Why should you both be miserable because of some piece of paper and a man who did not deserve you in the first place?" Amelia stared at the older woman, struck by the simple truth of her words. She had been so worried about propriety, about doing the right thing, that she had not stopped to ask herself what she actually wanted. And what she wanted was James. She wanted to wake up next to him every morning, to build a life with him, to be the partner he deserved. But wanting and having were two different things. That evening, James asked if she would take a walk with him. They strolled along the fence line as the sun set, the air finally cooling after the heat of the day. For a while they walked in comfortable silence, but Amelia could sense that James had something on his mind. "I went to see a lawyer in Tucson last week," James said finally. "Asked about your situation, about what options you might have." Amelia's heart started to pound. "And what did he say?" "He said that if Thomas has truly abandoned you, if he is not providing any support and has no intention of returning, you can petition for a divorce on grounds of abandonment and desertion. It might take a year or so to process, but it can be done." A year. That was both forever and no time at all. "Did you tell the lawyer it was for me?" "No, I kept it hypothetical. But Amelia, I want you to know that I will pay all the legal fees. I will help you through every step of the process. And when it is done, when you are finally free of him, I would be honored if you would consider marrying me." Amelia stopped walking and turned to face him, her eyes wide. "James, you do not have to propose out of some sense of obligation or propriety." "I am not," James said, taking both her hands in his. "I am proposing because I love you, because I have loved you since the day I found you sitting in that broken chicken coop, refusing to give up even though everything was falling apart around you. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you tackle every challenge with determination. I love the sound of your laugh and the way you tilt your head when you are thinking hard about something. I love you, Amelia Carson, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you are not a burden but a blessing." Amelia felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. "I love you too, James. I think I have loved you from the beginning, even when I was trying not to." James cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Is that a yes? Will you marry me once you are free?" "Yes," Amelia whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." James smiled, a smile so full of happiness and relief that it took her breath away. Then he leaned down and kissed her, soft and gentle at first, then deeper as she pressed closer to him. It was Amelia's first real kiss, the brief peck at her wedding to Thomas having been perfunctory and cold. This was different. This was full of promise and passion and all the feelings they had been holding back for months. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "I will court you properly," he promised. "We will do this right. no matter what anyone says. And when you are finally my wife, it will be because you chose me freely, not because you had no other choice." Over the next months, James was true to his word. He courted Amelia with a determination and devotion that made her fall more in love with him every day. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow, taught her to ride a horse properly, and sat with her on the porch in the evenings reading aloud from books she loved. They worked side by side during the day, their partnership easy and natural, and spent their evenings talking about everything and nothing. The lawyer James had consulted filed the divorce papers in September, citing Thomas's abandonment and desertion. There was talk in town, of course, tongues wagging about the abandoned wife living on the ranch of a bachelor. But James faced down the gossips with a steely determination, making it clear that Amelia was under the respectable care of his housekeeper, and that anyone who spoke ill of her would answer to him. Mrs. Gonzalez was a fierce protector as well, spreading the word about how Thomas had left Amelia with nothing, how James had taken her in out of Christian charity, and how everything was completely proper. Slowly, the talk died down, replaced by a grudging respect for Amelia's hard work and quiet dignity. Winter came, cold and harsh even in Arizona. Amelia spent her days helping Mrs. Gonzalez with the increased household tasks, the cooking and cleaning and preparing for the holidays. James made sure the cottage was well stocked with firewood and that the women had everything they needed. It was Christmas Eve when the lawyer sent word that there had been developments. Thomas had been found working in a mining camp in California. When served with the divorce papers, he had signed them without contest, apparently relieved to be free of the wife he considered a burden. The divorce would be final within a few months. Amelia stood in the main house, the letter trembling in her hands, hardly able to believe it was real. She was going to be free, truly free to start her life over, to marry the man she loved. James swept her into his arms, spinning her around, his laughter mingling with hers. Mrs. Gonzalez and Rosa cheered, and they celebrated that evening with a special dinner and many toasts to the future. The winter passed slowly, each day bringing Amelia closer to freedom. She and James continued their courtship, but there was a new lightness to it now, a joy that came from knowing their waiting would soon be over. They made plans for their wedding, deciding to keep it simple with just a few close friends and neighbors. They talked about the future, about expanding the ranch, about the children they both hoped to have someday. "I want at least 4, James said one afternoon as they sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold. "Maybe more. I want this house full of noise and laughter and life." Amelia smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "That sounds perfect. Though you might regret saying that when you are up all night with a crying baby." "I could never regret anything that comes from our love," James said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. In March of 1884, the divorce was finalized. Amelia Carson was no longer Mrs. Thomas Winters. She was just Amelia, free to chart her own course, to make her own choices. The wedding was set for April, to be held in the small church in Oro Blanco. Amelia spent the weeks before sewing herself a new dress, pale blue silk that Mrs. Gonzalez had helped her order from Tucson. Rosa helped her with the delicate embroidery on the bodice, and Amelia felt a sense of accomplishment seeing the beautiful garment take shape under her hands. The night before the wedding, Mrs. Gonzalez sat with Amelia in the cottage, helping her prepare. "You are happy?" the older woman asked, pinning up Amelia's hair in a simple style. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Amelia admitted. "Sometimes I wake up afraid this is all a dream, that I will open my eyes and still be back at Thomas's ranch, miserable and alone." "No dream," Mrs. Gonzalez said firmly. You made this happen, you and James together. You chose happiness, chose love. That takes courage. I could not have done it without you and Rosa, Amelia said, meeting the older woman's eyes in the mirror. You took me in, helped me find my feet again. I will never forget that. Mrs. Gonzalez patted her shoulder affectionately. You are family now. We take care of family. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the Arizona sky a brilliant blue dotted with puffy white clouds. Amelia dressed carefully in her new gown, her hands shaking slightly with nerves and excitement. Rosa helped her with the buttons and adjusted the small veil that Mrs. Gonzalez had lent her, something old from her own wedding many years before. When Amelia walked into the church on Mrs. Gonzalez's arm, she saw James waiting at the altar, and her breath caught. He was dressed in his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his green eyes locked on her with such love and devotion that she felt it like a physical warmth spreading through her chest. This was so different from her first wedding. Then, she had been scared and uncertain, marrying a stranger out of desperation. Now, she was choosing love freely, walking toward a future she had built with her own hands and her own courage. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. The preacher spoke about love and partnership, about choosing each other every day and building a life together. When it came time for the vows, James held both her hands and spoke directly to her, his voice steady and sure. Amelia, I vow to cherish you every day of my life. To be your partner in all things, in joy and in sorrow. I vow to never make you feel small or worthless, but to lift you up and celebrate the incredible woman you are. You are my answered prayer, my greatest blessing, and I will spend the rest of my days showing you how loved and valued you are. Amelia felt tears sliding down her cheeks as she spoke her own vows. James, you saved me when I was drowning. You showed me that I was worthy of love and respect. I vow to be your partner and your friend, to work beside you to build the life we both dream of. I vow to love you with everything I am, today and always. You lifted my spirits when I felt like a burden, and I will never stop being grateful for the day you rode into my life. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, James's kiss was tender and full of promise. The small gathering of friends and neighbors cheered, and Amelia felt surrounded by warmth and acceptance, so different from the cold ceremony of her first marriage. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food provided by several neighbor women who had come to accept and respect Amelia. There was music and dancing, laughter and joy, and Amelia felt like she was floating, buoyed by happiness and love. As the sun set and the party began to wind down, James took Amelia's hand and led her to the house. Mrs. Gonzalez and Rosa had moved their things to the cottage permanently, giving the newlyweds their privacy. James carried Amelia over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the parlor. "Welcome home, Mrs. Yeager," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "It feels like home," Amelia said, looking around at the house that would now be hers, that she would fill with love and life. "It feels perfect." That night, they came together as husband and wife, and it was everything Amelia had dreamed it could be. Tender and passionate, James showed her what it meant to be truly cherished, to be loved completely. She gave herself to him without reservation, knowing she was safe, knowing she was valued, knowing this was exactly where she was meant to be. The months that followed were the happiest of Amelia's life. She threw herself into making the ranch house a true home, adding curtains and rugs, planting flowers around the porch, cooking meals that she and James would share at the end of long days working together. She helped with the cattle and the horses, surprising herself with how much she enjoyed the physical work and the satisfaction of seeing the ranch prosper under their combined efforts. James was everything a husband should be. He consulted her on decisions about the ranch, valued her opinions, and made her feel like a true partner. He was affectionate and attentive, still bringing her wildflowers and stealing kisses when they passed each other during the day. At night, he held her close and told her about his dreams, and she shared hers, and they wove those dreams together into a shared future. In November, Amelia realized she had not had her monthly courses in quite some time. She confided in Mrs. Gonzalez, who smiled knowingly and felt her belly with experienced hands. "You are with child," the older woman confirmed. "Maybe 3 months along, I think." Amelia was overwhelmed with joy and a little fear. A baby. She was going to be a mother. She thought about her own mother, who had died when Amelia was young, and hoped she would be able to give her child the love and stability she had lost so early. That evening, she told James. He was out in the barn checking on a mare who was close to foaling, and Amelia found him there, the lamplight casting warm shadows across his face. "James, I need to tell you something," she said, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. He looked up, immediately concerned. "What is wrong?" "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," Amelia said, a smile breaking across her face. "James, we are going to have a baby." For a moment, James just stared at her, his expression blank with shock. Then a grin spread across his face, wide and joyful, and he let out a whoop of happiness that startled the horses. He swept Amelia into his arms, spinning her around just like he had on Christmas Eve. "We are having a baby," he repeated, setting her down carefully as if she were suddenly made of glass. "Amelia, that is the best news. We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Amelia asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," James said, his hands cupping her face. "You have given me everything I ever wanted, Amelia. A home, a partner, and now a child. I am the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Amelia had some morning sickness in the early months, but Mrs. Gonzalez's ginger tea helped, and by the time winter arrived, she was feeling strong and healthy. Her belly grew round, and James was endlessly fascinated by it, talking to the baby and feeling for kicks with an expression of wonder on his face. They prepared the spare bedroom as a nursery, painting it a soft yellow and building a cradle from smooth oak. Amelia sewed tiny gowns and blankets, her heart swelling with love for the child she had not yet met. Rosa was excited about the coming baby, already volunteering to help with the care. In May of 1885, Amelia went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Amelia thought she could not bear another contraction. But Mrs. Gonzalez was there, coaching her through it, and James held her hand, whispering words of encouragement and love. When their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, Amelia felt a love so fierce and immediate it took her breath away. James cut the cord with shaking hands, and when Mrs. Gonzalez placed the baby in Amelia's arms, they both wept with joy. "He is perfect," James said, his finger tracing the baby's tiny hand. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Daniel James Yeager, and he was indeed perfect, dark hair like his father but with Amelia's blue eyes. He was a hungry, healthy baby who kept them up at night but filled their days with joy. Watching James with their son, Amelia felt her heart might burst from happiness. He was a devoted father, changing nappies without complaint, walking the floor with Daniel when he was fussy, singing off key lullabies that somehow always worked. This was the family she had dreamed of, the life she had thought was impossible just 2 years ago. Daniel grew quickly, a happy baby who smiled early and often. As he began to sit up and then crawl, he brought chaos and laughter to the household. Amelia found motherhood both harder and more rewarding than she had imagined, but she loved every moment of it, even the difficult ones. When Daniel was about 18 months old, Amelia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. James was just as excited and attentive as the first time, and Daniel, though too young to fully understand, seemed to sense something was different. Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Rose, arrived in February of 1887. She had James's green eyes and Amelia's lighter hair, and from the beginning, she was a calm, peaceful baby, so different from her boisterous brother. The ranch continued to prosper. James's hard work and smart decisions paid off, and they were able to expand the herd and build a new, larger barn. Amelia managed the household and the garden, which had become extensive and productive. They hired a young man named Miguel to help with the heavy ranch work, giving James more time to spend with his family. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep, and they sat together on the porch watching the stars come out, Amelia would think back to that miserable woman she had been, standing in Thomas Winters's broken chicken coop, feeling worthless and alone. It seemed like a lifetime ago, like a different person entirely. "What are you thinking about?" James asked one such evening, his arm around her shoulders. "About how far I have come," Amelia said. "About how you saved me." James shook his head. "You saved yourself, Amelia. I just gave you a safe place to land while you figured things out. All of this, everything you have built, that is all you." "We built it together," Amelia corrected. "That is what makes it special. We are partners in everything." "Partners," James agreed, pulling her closer. "I love you, Amelia Yeager, more today than yesterday, and I will love you even more tomorrow." "You are still the answer to my lonely prayers," Amelia said, echoing his words from so long ago. "The best answer I could have ever hoped for." They sat in comfortable silence, the night air cool and pleasant, the sound of coyotes singing in the distance. This was home, this was family, this was the life Amelia had chosen for herself when she found the courage to stop being a burden and start being a partner. The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and hard work. Daniel grew into a sturdy, adventurous boy who loved helping his father with the cattle. Sarah was quieter, more thoughtful, content to help Amelia in the garden or sit with a book. In 1889, they welcomed their third child, another son they named Matthew Thomas, giving him Thomas as a middle name not to honor Amelia's first husband, but because it meant twin, and Matthew looked remarkably like Daniel had at birth. The ranch became known throughout the territory for its quality cattle and well-bred horses. James's reputation as an honest, hard-working rancher spread, and they formed friendships with neighbors and business associates. Amelia became known for her garden and her preserves, which she sold at the market in Oro Blanco, taking pride in contributing to the family income. Mrs. Gonzalez remained a beloved part of their household until her death in 1892, passing peacefully in her sleep at the age of 68. They buried her on a small hill overlooking the ranch, and Amelia grieved for the woman who had been like a mother to her. Rosa stayed on, eventually marrying Miguel and building a small house on the edge of the property. Their children grew up alongside the Yeager children, creating an extended family that was bound by love rather than blood. In 1894, Amelia discovered she was pregnant once more, a surprise as she was now 33 and had thought her childbearing years might be over. This pregnancy was harder than the others, and there were complications that frightened both her and James. But their fourth child, a daughter they named Elizabeth Grace, arrived safely in March of 1895, and Amelia held her new baby with gratitude and relief. By the turn of the century, the Yeager Ranch was one of the most successful in southern Arizona. Daniel, now 15, was already talking about taking over the ranch someday. Sarah, at 13, had discovered a talent for drawing and dreamed of becoming an artist. Matthew, at 11, was the family clown, always making everyone laugh. And little Elizabeth, at 5, was the baby of the family, doted on by her older siblings and parents alike. On their 16th wedding anniversary in April of 1900, James and Amelia stood on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, the challenges of raising 4 children, the normal ups and downs of life. But through it all, their love had only grown stronger. "You remember the first day we met?" James asked, his arm around Amelia's waist. "You sitting in that pile of broken wood looking like the world had beaten you down." Amelia smiled. "I remember thinking you were too kind to be real. That someone so caring could not possibly exist. And now," James prompted, "now I know that kindness is real, that love is real, that second chances are possible." Amelia leaned into his embrace. "You showed me that I was not a burden, James. You lifted my spirits when I had nothing left, and you have been lifting them every day since." "You were never a burden," James said firmly, as he had said so many times over the years. "You were, and are the greatest blessing of my life. Everything good I have because you chose to share your life with me." From inside the house came the sound of their children laughing, Elizabeth's high giggle mixing with Matthew's lower chuckle. It was the sound of home, of family, of a life built on love and mutual respect. "We did all right, did we not?" Amelia said, looking up at her husband. "Built something real and lasting." "We did better than all right," James said, kissing her softly. "We built everything." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Amelia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the depths of despair in a loveless marriage to the heights of joy in a true partnership. From feeling worthless and alone to knowing she was cherished and valued. From being told she was a burden to understanding she was a blessing. The road had not always been easy, but it had been worth every difficult step. Because it had led her here, to this porch, to this man, to this family, to this life that was exactly what she had needed all along. James pulled her closer, and they stood together watching the night fall. 2 people who had found each other when they both needed it most, who had chosen love over fear, partnership over loneliness, and who had built something beautiful from the broken pieces of their past. In the distance, a coyote howled, and from the barn, a horse whinnied in response. The wind rustled through the cottonwood trees James had planted when they first married, now tall and strong. Everything smelled of sage and dust and home. "I love you, James Yeager," Amelia said. "Today, tomorrow, and always." "And I love you, Amelia Yeager," James replied. "You are still the answer to my lonely prayers, and you always will be." They stood there until the children called them in for the anniversary cake Sarah had baked, until duty and family pulled them back inside. But they carried that moment with them, that perfect expression of love and contentment, adding it to the thousands of other perfect moments they had collected over their years together. The story of Amelia and James was not one of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though James had indeed saved her in many ways. It was a story of 2 people choosing each other every day, of building a life brick by brick, of finding strength in partnership and joy in the simple moments. It was a story of a woman who learned she was not a burden but a blessing, and a man who had the wisdom to see her worth when she could not see it herself. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind that lasts not just in the moment but for a lifetime, passed down through generations, who would tell the tale of how their grandmother Amelia came to Arizona as a mail-order bride, found herself trapped and alone, and then met the cowboy who lifted her spirits and showed her what love could really be. In the years to come, Daniel would take over the ranch as he had always planned, running it with the same integrity his father had shown. Sarah would indeed become an artist, her paintings of the Arizona landscape gaining recognition throughout the Southwest. Matthew would become a veterinarian, caring for the animals he had always loved. And Elizabeth would become a teacher, educating children in the growing town of Oro Blanco. But that was all in the future. For now, on this perfect April evening in 1900, Amelia and James were simply two people in love, standing on their porch, watching the stars come out and counting their blessings. They had 4 healthy children, a prosperous ranch, good friends, and each other. They had built a life of meaning and purpose, of love and laughter. They had overcome obstacles that might have defeated others and emerged stronger for it. Most importantly, they had found in each other exactly what they had been searching for all along. A partner, a friend, a love that would last through all the seasons of their lives. As they finally went inside James's hand in hers, Amelia looked back one more time at the Arizona night, vast and beautiful and full of possibility. This was home. This was family. This was love. And it was more than she had ever dared to dream. Back when she was a frightened bride who felt like a burden, before a kind cowboy had lifted her spirits and shown her that she was worthy of love, of respect, of a happily ever after. The door closed behind them, and the house filled with the warmth of family and love, a testament to what two people could build when they chose each other, when they worked together, when they believed in the power of second chances and the enduring strength of true love. Their story was complete, every thread woven together into a beautiful tapestry of a life well lived and a love well earned. And in the quiet moments, in the laughter of their children and the comfort of their embrace, Amelia knew with absolute certainty that every difficult moment, every tear, every struggle had been worth it to arrive at this place of peace and joy. She was no longer the broken woman in the chicken coop. She was Amelia Yeager, wife, mother, rancher, partner. She was loved and valued and cherished. She was home, and that was the greatest gift of all.